Are you the one making mistakes in combat? Well, if you're not, then probably someone at your table is. So let's go over a few tips that I have to make combat a little bit better and to help your party focus. Mistakes in combat are pretty common, either because you're new at the game, new to whatever that setting is, maybe you're new to that class, just got a new ability. But there's a lot of things that people don't think about, especially coming from video games, or maybe they're not familiar with gaming at all. Some of those things we can work on just by having a quick talk with our other players at the table, and it will help us out drastically when it comes to either speeding up combat because we're working together, or to make things a little bit easier on us if we have a deadly DM. So one of the first things is action economy. In Pathfinder 1E, which is the main game that I play, you're looking at having a 5-foot step. You've got a move action, your action. You also have a bonus action, free action. Your action economy, a lot of times, designing your character to use all those possible actions that you have access to in your action economy is going to make your character much more efficient. Having a bunch of abilities that require you to use your action when you end up only going to be using one of them just kind of leaves everything else out on the cold. And so it's better to have a character that can buff or heighten themselves with a bonus action, perform an attack and or a melee attack, casting a spell all in the same turn, and still get their movement. Action economy is really one of the things that DMs have to deal with pretty heavily, because when you have one big bad, action economy is against him because he has 3, 4, 6 players and they all have got all of their actions combined together. So a single monster, unless they have lair actions or a bunch of free actions, are at a disadvantage. Focus fire. This is something that you see a lot of times with new people or people not familiar with the mechanics. Focus fire is going to make combat a lot easier for you. You're going to be able to shorten combat. You're going to limit the amount of resources that you have to spend. You're going to limit the damage and therefore the amount of resources you have to spend to get back up to full strength, or time you have to rest to get back to full strength in order to continue on. So focusing fire is going to be a big one, where you have at least half the party or a majority of the party that are specific with dealing damage, focusing to get down one target. Target priority is another one. It kind of goes along with that, is knowing which creature, which monster, which NPC that you and your party need to gun down to be optimal. Either you're looking at a caster that's in the back and you're worried about a fireball. I don't know how many times I've had players who are not used to fighting casters have a decent CR'd caster standing in the background casting spells on them, and they're wondering why they keep taking all of these hits, all of these debuffs, because even though they have ranged characters or they can get to him real easy, they're choosing to ignore him, and ignoring a wizard is not a good idea. Unless, well, it's not a good idea even if you can't ignore most of the CRs, because your DM is going to throw something at you. So target priority, talk it over. Another thing, as a GM, you might want to limit the amount of talking they do, because if you have a planning group, like I sometimes do, they will chitty chat a whole lot, and they'll spend 5 minutes in a 5-second turn or a 6-second turn. And so, but yeah, focus fire, target priority. Positioning is important, especially when you talk about games like Pathfinder, where you're dealing with different levels of color or cover, depending on what your range and what you have access to the opponent and how big they are. Same thing goes with flanking. There's a lot of times where you will have your melee guys and they will not flank. They will not get that advantage or that +2 to their attack because they are refusing to work their way around and flank opponents. So positioning your tank or your big guys to be able to stop advances of creatures, a guy with a polearm, a guy with the ability to stop other melee monsters of some sort, being able to stop their advancement to get to the squishier characters or that wizard that you might be protecting in the back. That wizard not being up in the middle of combat and knowing their place and how far they need to get into combat, how close they need to get to someone for their spells to work, but still keep back out of danger is important. Same thing goes with if you have ranged or wizard characters on the opposing team, you need to position yourself so you are out of sight and are no longer in danger from those characters that can target you from a long distance away, and you can still provide aid to the party. So positioning, flanking is very important. Just in generally having your parties communicate during combat is great. And even if your DM limits it to 6-second sections, it's good to communicate either what you see, if they can't see, like with my VTTs, each character sees individually what they can see. Some of them can see new monsters, new threats, new options. Had maps where each player only sees a quarter of what is actually on the field. So if they don't communicate, they're not going to make it. Resource management is another one. Resource management, it's great to want to go supernova. And depending on your class, if you're a kineticist in Pathfinder, going supernova is great. You're dealing massive damage. You're doing all these amazing different blasts and adding all these abilities to it, except for the fact that, one, you're hurting yourself. You're running out of your resources, and you can't continue to do that all day long. I mean, that's the design of the class, which is good because then everyone would just play whatever you're playing. But resource management, knowing that in Pathfinder, you should be buying some kind of damage spell or taking a feat that allows you to up the damage of a low-level wand or staff so that you can conserve some of your more powerful spells for those situations that you think you need it. You don't just dump 4 spells into the first combat of the day as a low-level wizard and then not be able to do anything. Your cantrips are not going to be that beneficial unless you're just trying to detect magic or deal 1d3 points of acid damage to somebody. In fact, at low levels, I've had wizards use bows that were elves because it allowed them to save their toppling magic missiles for multiple targets or something like that. Resource management is something that you have to learn. Same thing with spontaneous casters. With Pathfinder, you're going to get a Rod of Cure Light Wounds. Everyone does it all the time. To heal your party in between combats because your caster, your divine character, especially if she is spontaneous, has access to all these great spells, but if she uses all of them just to heal the party up, then she can't do anything else with them. Meanwhile, everyone chips in for a cheap rod and you're all set. We use them from level 1 to level 20 all the way, even though one of my games, I have a Oracle that's level 14, and I think she can cure something along the lines of, I think it's 400 points of damage or close to it without using a spell, just by using a feat line. Learning how to manage the resources of your character is important. And just, here's another one, knowing your class, your abilities, your spells, know what they do. Another thing that takes a lot of time when you do combat, especially in a game like Pathfinder, is not knowing, one, what you're going to do the next round. You should be thinking what you're going to do when it's not your turn. Okay, it changes a little bit because they have moved. That's fine. I'm going to do this. You should be ready when it's your turn. Second, you should know what your spells do. You should look at them beforehand, and you should know generally what all of your spells are do. You should even have your favorites and what your abilities in your class do. You should know all this. Look at it before the game. That way you don't, every time you play your game on Saturday mornings, open up your character sheet and it's like a new character every single time. You've got to look and see what you could do. So, resource management. Speed up your turns by paying attention to the battlefield and deciding what you're going to do before it's even your turn. Knowing your class, your abilities. You made the character. You should be able to keep up with these things. Also, be aware of your surroundings and the environment. No, this goes along a lot with the positioning, is be aware of your surroundings. Same thing with positioning. When you're inside of a city, maybe you can spend a movement or part of your action and get a higher ground. Takes you out of all melee combat unless they really want to get to you. Takes you to a higher ground, which means it's going to be easier for you to do range hits if you either use raise or if you're an archer or some kind of ranged attack character. And so that very much goes with positioning, is being aware of your surroundings and your environment, especially if you happen to have a GM like me who will put you in a bog or something where that fireball might light everybody on fire. Just saying. Another thing for combat is it's great to have the characters that have their niche, and it's good for everyone to be able to cover their different little niches and everything. And so everyone is, well, I'm melee damage dealing, and no one's better at it than me. That's great. I am battlefield control. That's cool. I am a buffer. I am a whatever. Also plan as much as you can for your shortcomings. If someone closes distance on you and your party has been cut off, or maybe they are unable to pull or physically maneuver an enemy out of your range and you're a caster, what do you do to get yourself out? You have some kind of thunderclap, some kind of thunderstep. If you're a kineticist, can you ride the bolt? You're going to use these abilities to get yourself out so that you can go back to taking care of business and finish these encounters as quickly as possible. Yep, those are a few of my short tips for combat. Hopefully your next combat will be exciting, be fast, and be fun. If you like this video, check out my others. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. If you have any tips or requests, drop them in the comments below. And until next time, may your crits be epic, your adventures legendary, and your gaming table filled with laughter.